All right, so we're out here at Fort Sill. This is the U.S. Army Field Artillery Museum. I've got the curator, basically the man to talk to if you're coming to the Field Artillery Museum, Gordon Blaker. Thanks so much for joining us on the show today. Yes. I guess tell me a little bit about the Field Artillery Museum, the history here. When did all this get started?
I was recruited to come out here and open the museum. I arrived in December 2008, and we opened up in the spring of 2009.
Okay.
And our primary purpose is to train new artillery soldiers and officers in their history and heritage.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So you, in addition to getting visitors from the public, which you do get, if you come out to Fort Sill, you just have to check in at the visitor center, and you can come out here and see all the nice displays you have. But there's also like artillery students that come out here and kind of learn the history, right?
Yeah, we have people come and research from all over the world because we have a very extensive collection of U.S. and enemy artillery.
I was gonna say probably a lot of people working on historic books, documentaries, things like that.
Modelers.
Yes, this would be a nice place to visit. So I know once monthly you all shoot some cannons, and anytime cannons are active and involved, I want to see it. What is this that we're in front of? What can you tell me about
The
this?
museum's gun crew is staff and volunteers, and this is the model 1841 6-pound gun, and we have an exact reproduction of this one, and that's what we normally bring out and fire the second Saturday of the month normally. You just need to call the museum and make sure that we have enough of us to actually do that.
Right.
And we normally fire at 10, 11, and noon.
How many different artillery pieces do you have here in the museum?
There's a little over 100 inside the museum. There are another 100 outside in Artillery Park, and another 120 in another building.
First of all, a lot of them did see live action in the field.
Yes.
And Fort Sill, I guess, had a lot of these under their control before the museum opened, or how did that work?
They were part of the Fort Sill Museum originally, and then the new Field Artillery Museum was established when I arrived.
Right. And you're actually involved in doing some of the restoration for these pieces, right?
We do some pieces in-house if they're not too large or complicated. The largest piece we've done, though, is a 49-foot-long Cobra helicopter from the Vietnam War. That was done in-house.
For people who are really into history, they've got something to see here, for sure.
Yep.
Cool, you want to look around? Or?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. For our Revolutionary War buffs, I mean, we've got some real gems here. This is from Saratoga, actually, right?
Yep, turning point of the Revolutionary War. This is a British 24-pounder gun that was one of the two 24-pounders that surrendered with Burgoyne after the Battle of Saratoga, and it's got the inscription on top of it.
Wow. And like we said, this was in actual use.
Yes.
In Saratoga. Wow. Yep. And what is this over here?
That one is our Yorktown trophy cannon. It's a 3-pounder, and it's got the Yorktown inscription on it. So it was one of the British artillery pieces surrendered when the British Army surrendered at Yorktown. So we've got both British Army surrender trophy cannons here.
Yeah, it's not often in Oklahoma, at least, that you find actual Revolutionary War items. That's crazy.
Revolutionary War is a big part of the artillery history, so we have a nice selection of Revolutionary War artifacts.
All right, so this is a howitzer that was developed especially, I guess, for the Rocky Mountain areas. How does that work?
This is the mountain howitzer, introduced in 1841. It's your artillery piece you can go anywhere with. It's towed behind 2 horses in line. If the terrain gets too steep or rugged, not a problem. Stop, disassembly. Takes 1 minute to take this apart. It's held together by 4 pins, loaded onto the pack saddles, and keep on going.
Do you think I could take it apart in 1 minute? I don't know.
Yes, you could. There's 2 pins to hold the tube on and 1 on each wheel. You pull the pins out, and that's it.
So now we're in sort of the Civil War area. So what can you tell me about what we have here?
Well, we have here a limber chest or ammunition chest for a 12-pound gun, and it's fitted out with reproduction ammo. And you have 3 different types of ammo: shot, used like a bowling ball; spherical case shot, more about that in a minute; and shell. This is shell. It's packed full of gunpowder or explosive in the center, fuse at the top to set it off. In 1784, British artillery officer Henry Shrapnel takes shell, leaves a little bit of powder under the fuse, and fills the rest of the cavity with 60 musket balls.
Oh.
So when this explodes, you have shell fragment chunks and 60 musket balls flying into your target.
Wow.
Yeah. That is known as spherical case shot. We've got enemy troops at 1,100 meters, and we're going to use shell. We go here, shell, go down to 1,080 meters, go over to the next column, time of flight, 4 seconds. That's your fuse time. You take a 5-second fuse, clip 1 second off of it, load it into the fuse holder. When the cannon's fired, the fuse is lit, burns down till it hits the center and blows that thing apart.
Is this
And ideally, you'll get about 15 of these chunks of flying iron.
Wow. All right, so what can you tell me about this piece right here? I can already tell compared to what we've seen earlier. This is really big.
That is a 30-pound Parrot rifle named for its inventor, Robert Parrot. He took a cast iron cannon tube to wrap a reinforcing band around the breech, keep it from blowing up where all the pressure is. And tube weight is 4,200 pounds. And in the spring of 1862, batteries of these heavy rifle guns were used to reduce Fort Pulaski outside Savannah, Georgia in only 30 hours.
Wow.
That was the end of brick and masonry fortifications in the United States. It punched a hole through a 7.5 feet solid brick wall in less than 30 hours,
Yes.
resulting in the surrender of the fort.
If someone just pulls up with this thing, I'm waving the white flag personally.
And then this little toy here was used on Fort Pulaski also. This is the 10-inch Seacoast mortar. Takes this 92-pound shell, launches it nearly 2.5 miles. Wow. And that's 5,700 pounds of cast iron, tube only.
Well, Gordon, I was just talking about how the progression of these of the artillery over time. But here's an example of maybe something that didn't work quite as well as they imagined.
This is the 1880 experimental mule gun, and allegedly someone built this cannon to be placed on the back of a mule and fired off the back of the mule. Of course, recoil, this didn't work too well.
Right. Mule with a gun sounds like it could be an interesting movie concept, perhaps. I don't know about a real world concept.
Just got this one. This is a very rare piece. The Stokes mortar was developed by an Englishman in World War I. He was an engineer by trade, but had no military experience or knowledge. He wanted to help his country out, and so basically designed the first tube-type mortar. So you got the German trench mortar, weighs about 1,200 pounds. You got this one, weighs 103 pounds.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, and this is the first of the new family of mortars.
Right. What is down here?
This is artillery pieces that were used in between World War I and World War II, and then going into the World War II area with our Battle of the Bulge diorama at the end.
Cool.
We used 3 different self-propelled artillery pieces in World War II: a light with a 75 millimeter howitzer, a medium with a 105 millimeter howitzer, which was the most heavily used one. This is the M7 Priest, and this is our Battle of the Bulge diorama, which portrays a battery commander, the captain, bringing a resupply of ammunition to the howitzer using his Jeep. Yeah. And we have a walkway that goes up around the back of the wall there, so you can look down inside the fighting compartment of the howitzer.
Very cool. These scenes are very impressive.
This is the M12. It's our first 155 millimeter self-propelled artillery piece. They were made in 1942. Saw very heavy combat in Europe during the war, and then when the war ended, they were started to be replaced by 2 new artillery pieces, and so the M12s were simply sold off as scrap iron. This is the sole surviving M12 there is. Wow. Got a piece down here you'll definitely want. World's first digital computer,
Ah,
ENIAC. You may have heard of it.
yeah.
1945,
Wow.
beginning of the computer age.
So, what is the artillery application of the ENIAC?
This was built for the artillery in World War II to do the mathematical calculations that are used in the fire direction centers, previously done by a mathematician with a pencil. Someone in 1945 decided that was taking too long, so they had this first digital computer constructed. Wow. It is the Electrical Numerical Integrator and Computer, ENIAC. Now, this is just a tiny portion of the original system, which occupied an 1,800 square foot room and weighed over 30 tons.
Wow.
It was in service for 10 years. In 1955, they took it out of service. Just big piece of obsolete computer junk. Less than 50% of it still survives today. Other pieces are scattered around various museums around the country. Right. But this is the biggest piece of it you can see on exhibit anywhere.
Very cool. On one hand, very impressive that that they were able to do this. On the other hand, all this equipment to replace one guy with a pencil. It's interesting to think about.
Well, this did hundreds of calculations per minute. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure it made things a lot more fast and efficient.
Yes. And basically the technology kept getting smaller and faster until finally in 2005, we get the final solution, which is a laptop with the software program they still use today on it. So, wow. Upgraded versions, of course. Mm-hmm. And then these are the first two radars used. 1953 in the Vietnam War.
So we're here in front of this massive atomic Annie, you said?
Yes.
So what's the history here with this piece?
This is a 280 millimeter gun that was introduced in 1953, and that year they took it out to the test grounds in Nevada, loaded a 15 kiloton nuclear projectile into it, successfully fired it.
Wow.
It's the only cannon to ever fire a nuclear projectile.
Yes, as a test.
Yeah.
Right? Wow.
So it worked.
Right.
And these were in service from 1953 to 1963 when they were replaced by longer range rockets and missiles.
Okay, right. So this is, that's interesting. So in 1953, they were testing nuclear warheads, I guess? Yeah, okay, wow. So that wasn't part of the Manhattan Project?
No.
Right.
No.
Okay.
It's 80, when it's hooked up to its two trucks, it's 85 feet long, weighs 85 tons. Uh-huh. This is the AH-1 Cobra attack helicopter. It was introduced in 1967. It was part of the aerial rocket artillery of the Vietnam War. This is the M109A6 Paladin. It's a 155 millimeter self-propelled howitzer.
This looks serious. So when was this used?
This is in use today.
Oh, right.
The new A7 version, which has a number of improvements, is currently being fielded, but there's plenty of A6s still in service.
Right.
The M109 was first introduced back in the early 1960s. It's gone through continuous upgrades over the years.
Okay. How many people does it take to man
This
the
is
Paladin?
a 4-man crew. This is serial number 4, so it's one of the very first MLRSs.
Cool.
Which is multiple launch rocket system. Carries 12 rockets, or you can have a pod that has 2 missiles in it or 1 ATACMS missile. You just get to select whichever pod you want to load.
Well, this has been an awesome trip through the museum, so thank you so much for showing me around. But we've got to, before we leave, we've got to see the fragment of the Berlin Wall you've actually got here. How did this come to be here?
This is 3 sections of the Berlin Wall and the pipe up on top of it, which was an anti-climbing device, more effective than razor wire because you can hook wire, you can't hook a pipe. And this was brought back from Berlin, Germany when the wall came down in the early 1990s. It was originally on display over in Snow Hall, and then at one point they wanted to move it out, and I was glad to take it in here.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and this, in addition to over here in front of us, is a fragment of the World Trade Center, like a beam. Yes.
That's a section of I-beam that came out of one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center 9/11.
So talking about just some of the most significant historic events in the history of the world. I mean, right here in the museum. Yeah. So it's a great place to come and visit if you're interested in history.
Yes.
Well, Gordon, thank you so much.
You're
I had
welcome.
a great time. Yes.